Good everyone, Andrew Price here from Blender Guru with a new tutorial on this, how to make a modern interior scene. So the Archiviz community or genre is just exploding. Seems to be more and more people jumping into it. You look online, there's just loads of architectural renders. They look stunning, and the big question every newbie has is, how do I get started? How do I do that? Where do you begin? And if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have had no clue, because I tried it myself and I failed many times. But it took me 2 years of trying and just experimenting before I started to understand the genre and how it really works, how to actually go about making a scene and what rules there are and what rules you can break and little things like that. So I'm going to be sharing some of that in this tutorial. But first rule is that it is a process. When you're making, especially an interior scene, you might start off with an idea, like a concept. I'm going to make a bathroom, or I'm going to make a minimalistic something or other. But it can quickly change. It can evolve, and it's encouraged. You should embrace that. Basically, experiment with different things, different decorations, different colors, and just see how it turns out. So, for example, for this scene right here, this is how many revisions I went through before I ended up with my final result. So have a look at where I started, and I had more before this as well. So I was going really minimalistic, sort of Japanese style, and I didn't really know where I was going. I thought the curtain looked cool, so I added more curtains. Then realized that was a little bit too in your face. So now you can see it's sort of getting a little bit more modern, trying different patterns, trying a different pattern on the wall there, adding in some more sort of modern things. This is going for studio lighting sort of setup. That really didn't work. But it's all about experimenting, just trying things. Don't be scared of just seeing, like, hey, wonder if that wall there, if I change the pattern on the wall there, how would that look? What would I do if, there was a rug, or, something like that. Just try different things, and you'll end up with some cool looking results. And eventually I ended up here, of course. So anyway, that's just to give you a little bit of a background, but now we're going to start the actual tutorial. One final thing, we're going to be using the starter pack, which I released yesterday. There's a link underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube where you can download it. You will need it to participate in this tutorial. We're going to be using all the models, the textures, everything's inside that pack. So make sure you download it before you start. Anyways, enough talking, let's go. Alright, so with a new scene open, go ahead and delete that stupid default lamp. We won't need that, and let's focus on this cube. So this cube is going to be our room, so we're going to put the camera in there and everything and all the furniture, whatever else. First things first though, you want to get the scale right, and this is pretty important for realism, and it'll avoid problems later. So the height of a real ceiling is generally 2.74 meters high. Now I'm using metric units, which you can turn on there. And do use metric, please. No, 2.74 meters, that's the ceiling. And once that's set up, we want to go ahead and put our camera in the middle of that cube. All right, so something around about there. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a bit of room, pull that out about there. Okay, now, some people would start by trying to figure out, what sort of shape you want your room. But for interior renders, especially when you have furniture and things like that, it's actually better to add the furniture in and then adjust the size of the room as needed, as opposed to the other way around, which is the way we normally do things when we're moving into a house. So the biggest piece of furniture that we want to add to this room is a couch. So we can do that by hitting Shift F1, and we are going to be using the, this is the starter pack, of course, all the models here, couch leather, and then you want to click on group, because we're going to be appending always the group, and then click link append. And look at that, whoa, that's massive. All right, so let's just drag that back to around about there. Okay, so you can see the room is a bit small, so let's just drag that out so it's a little bit wider, and let's pull that back so that it's, let's hide this, let's pull it back to wherever we want this. Save out there. I'll raise the camera, move it about there. So that's sort of where I want the couch. Now let's move and reshape the room to suit our couch. Okay. All right, so I want a little bit of room on the right-hand side of the couch because I'm going to put some books there and there's going to be a curtain and stuff. And then over here, I'm going to be putting a light and a table and things like that. So a little bit of gap there. And then as well as that, I also want to have a little bit of a hallway. Now this can kind of help add a little bit of depth to this scene because I found that if you have just a closed off room, flat wall with just a simple subject like a couch on it, it can pretty quickly look very fake. Like, I mean, not fake, but well, it does definitely sell itself as a sort of a render when it's just like a squared off room. But having a hallway, it opens it up basically. It makes it look more roomy and inviting. So I've just added a really basic hallway like that. Okay. Okay, so I got the couch in. That's all fine and dandy. Now let's talk about the lighting. Lighting, very, very important. For interior scenes, you want to always use natural lighting. Why do you use natural light? Well, because unless you're doing a nighttime scene, there's no reason why you would have artificial light sources turned on to light the room. Like photographers do it because they need to balance out the levels and things like that. But if we were to start adding in, a plane and then going like, let me just position this over here and I'm going to light it like that, what you'll end up with is a very artificial looking lighting setup. It'll look like a studio, which you do not want. So always use natural lighting wherever possible. So I'm going to be dropping in a big glass sliding door right about here. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is delete both the ceiling and the floor. The reason for that is, as you'll see here, if I was to do a loop cut, you can see we've got a loop cut all the way across the house and on the other side of the wall. And depending on how complex your scene is, if you do that enough, you'll have vertices just running, edge loops just going everywhere. So by doing it like this, like that, now I can add a loop cut here and it doesn't affect anything else, okay? Now, of course, we've done that. We want to, of course, give a floor and a ceiling. So let's just drop in a plane. Very easy to reshape this. Okay. Right there, pretty good. Doesn't matter if it's bigger than the area. And then the ceiling, hey, very easy to do. Okay, awesome. So as I said, we've put a loop cut in here, and this is going to be our glass sliding door. And I want it to be roughly like from here to here where the couch is. I want it to be roughly about double what the couch is. So a nice big opening for the light, because this is the entire lighting for the scene is going to come in through that spot. So very important that you do get a decent size in there. And we're also going to be putting a curtain here, so that's going to block off some of the lighting as well. I might make that just a little bit bigger. And as well as that, just to spice things up a little bit, I'm going to put in 2 columns. So one at this end right here. So this is very easy to do. Just create sort of a little cubey thing right about there. Okay, nice column there. And then another one on that end there. And the reason I'm doing this is to just give it something else. Make it look like it's not as paper thin and, just gives it a bit of thickness and a bit of interest. It's also going to hide the curtain and our glass door when we do it, so that's going to come in handy as well. Okay, awesome. So for the lighting, okay, first of all, we'll move this couch just to a separate layer. I swear we will get to the lighting, trust me. We'll move this couch to its own separate layer. Now, lighting. We want to use natural lighting, okay? So you could just use a sun lamp, drop in a sun lamp. Problem with that is that you don't get the, all that detail from a sky, which has got clouds and all that stuff, which would cast beautiful light patterns inside the room. So we're going to be using an HDR light source, which is the new way to light scenes, all right? So this is how you do it. If you've never used one, go to World, enable World, and then under Color, click the little dot, and then select Environment Texture, and then Open. So in the starter pack, you have got 2 HDRs. It says 4, but 2 of them are JPEGs. So you can see the JPEGs are a lot smaller than HDRs, so you use them whenever you're going to do just for reflections, just to see, a reflection of something. But whenever you want to light a scene, you need to use an HDR, and I'll show you why in just a second. So we're going to use number 4 here, which has got, this one's overcast, and this one is got a little bit of clouds and a bit of sun. So we're going to use that. Click Open. Sorry, and now that we've got that, let's see how it looks. Go to rendered view mode. And what do you know? We've now got 360 degree view of everything. So this, of course, works really well for exterior scenes, but it also works for interior scenes. Now, one thing you might notice is look at all those fireflies, those little tiny little speckly dots. Horrible. No one likes them. They are our enemy. But check this out. Settings, check. Boom. It's like it's like a remove fireflies button, but it only works for HDRs. It just fixes that problem basically. And then this map resolution, basically this is like the higher resolution your HDR is and how much detail and stuff you got in it. You want to set this, I just generally go 2048. I don't know all the technicalities of, what all this does, but these are the measurements that I use, and it works really, really nicely. So, okay, so now if we can increase the strength of this, and it looks really nice. Now from our camera view, we've got some nice light coming in here, but if you look at the light coming in there, it's very, very soft. Okay, really soft, super soft. And we're not getting any of the actual sharp sunlight. So basically the reason for that is it's treating this entire environment like it's one giant light. It's not trying to actually find where the actual high light points are, which is really, if we turn down the strength of this is why using HDRs is cool, because it's got the multiple exposures saved into the data. You can see, like, you can turn this down. It looks like a nighttime scene now, but that's where the sun is right there. Which if you used a JPEG, by the way, you would not see this. This is why an .HDR comes in handy. See the difference that makes? Like, this is why HDRs are so much better, right? Because it's got all those multiple exposures. Anyways, as I said, we want it to find that point right there. So this is how you do it. Now, I can't remember who taught me this. I think it was somebody at a Blender conference who mentioned it, and I've been using it ever since. Works a treat. So get out of there. What you want to do is, this is in the node editor. Sorry, I pressed Shift F3. That, by the way, that's a little shortcut to take you to the node editor. And then click on World, and then here you got our HDR. And what I'm going to do is use a converter, math converter, drop that in, take the output of the HDR, put it into the top input, set this to multiply, and then plug that end into the strength of the HDR. Now what this is going to do is it's going to find the bright spot. Okay, now this will not look pretty from this angle, but check this out. When we go into this view, look at how much sharper that light is. So it's now a really nice sharp sunlight, which is beautiful, awesome. But there's a problem, because as you might remember, this is the light. See this nice blue light on the wall there? When we use this method, that lighting disappears, because we've only basically just taken that bright spot, and the rest of the sky is now basically dark. So this is something that I figured out by just experimenting. We can get the best of both worlds. We can get that sky bleed effect, that cool blue color with the sunlight, if we duplicate that multiply node and then set it to add. So now it's got the sunlight, and in addition to that, the normal light as well. So really cool. So basically this value here is however bright you want your sky lighting, your sky bleed effect, and this value here is how bright you want your sunlight, basically. So cool. But we're not done with the HDR yet. No, wait, there's more. We want to rotate the sunlight. We want it so it's actually shining on that wall there, not shining off to the edge there, because our couch is going to be here, and we want to guide the viewer's attention right here in the middle. So we can rotate an HDR by adding a texture coordinate node, a vector mapping node, grabbing the output of the generated texture coordinate, that's important, and then the output of the mapping, connecting that to the environment texture. Nothing should change, but now when we adjust this Z rotation here, this is now rotating the entire environment, which I think is pretty cool. See, so now the entire sunlight has been tilted. So you can see, like if I was to, spin this around, it's just spinning around the entire HDR, which is cool. So I'm going to be using a value of 28 degrees, which I know from, doing this scene already. The sunlight comes in at a really nice angle, which is going to look cool when we add in our couch and everything else that goes with it. So awesome. Sunlight is in. Whoa. Sunlight is in. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in those glass doors. So let's do that right now. So for this, I'm going to be using a add-on, which is called the Windows Generator Add-on 2, okay? So if you're watching this on the Architecture Academy promo site, there's a link underneath this video where you can download this. It's just called the Window Generator. If not, you can Google it. Install it, and then once you've done it, when you hit Shift A, you'll see underneath Mesh, you've got a new option there that says Window. Now, before you do that, position your cursor where you want your window to start, like the base of the window sill. So I want mine to be around about there. Okay. Oh, and cursor to selection. Why is it do? Oh, I know. Cursor to selection. All right. And then about there. Good. Awesome. All right. So now add window. Ta-da! Look at that. So what this does is it's modeled everything for you, saves you a whole bunch of time. It's really cool. And if you push T, toolbar, gives you a whole bunch of settings. Just don't click anything else or else all these settings will disappear. So I'm going to be doing, all I want to do is get a double door look. So, you know, you can do like some really elaborate stuff with this. You know, make it rounded windows and all sorts of fun stuff. But we're going for a really basic one. So we're just going with a double door look like that. So we can adjust the risers of the inner frames. Then you got the outer frame. The add-on doesn't have too many labels for this, but this is the height of that window. And these are the lengths of the appropriate doors and stuff like that. You can't rotate it with the default one, which is kind of annoying. I've got an extra one here which has got rotation settings, but with the actual official one, you can't actually rotate it. But it doesn't matter. We just want to get the height right. That's fine and dandy. Good. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to move that up ever so slightly so that we've got the sill, the window sill, which is acting as a little, you know, where there's a little stopper where you I don't know what maybe there's a reason there is an actual stopper for doors. Maybe so you mentally look down. I don't know. No idea. I don't know why I even brought it up. All right. So I'm going to do something a bit weird with this window. I'm just going to select one of these windows, this one that's indented, and I'm just going to pull it back. And this is going to act as our pretend glass sliding door. Isn't that fantastic? Great. Awesome. So it's too big. Let's pull the column back to there. That's good. And then this, pull this forward. You can't really see it because we've got the column sort of blocking it, which is good. But yeah, awesome. All right, now the other cool thing about that add-on is that it's given us the materials. Now these materials, you know, there's nothing actually set up, but they're at least in place and applied to the right parts of the mesh. So the biggest one you want to adjust is your glass material. Very, very important. Now a lot of people would think, for glass, what would you do for glass? Well, you would use, of course, a glass shader, and you would not be wrong unless you just did this and left it. Because what you'll find is, let's just move. Whoa, too many toolbars. If we just go to this, I'll show you. If we just leave that as glass, look at how noisy the room gets. And also, it's like the glass is a physical, like solid object. Like look at that shadow. It's a solid shadow. So it's not, the sunlight isn't really shining through the glass. The reason for that is the cycles is trying to physically, like accurately, calculate the caustics and the shadow that this glass would be casting into the scene, which is not really what we want. We want the sunlight to just basically shine straight through it while still giving us the reflection on the window. So this is how we do it. We do some trickery. This is where we get a little bit advanced, all right? But just hang on. We add a transparent shader, then mix it with a mix shader. Da-da. And then we use a light path node. Now, if you never used one of these before, I don't really have all the time to explain all the functions because it's pretty advanced stuff. But this is what we need to do. We need to use a math node. And all we're going to do is we're going to combine the is shadow ray and the is diffuse ray, which in a nutshell is going to say if the light, if the object in the room is going to be receiving a shadow or it's a diffuse object, treat it as though it is a transparent shader. So look at that. Now the sunlight is going straight through that door, but we're still getting the reflections on the door itself, which is pretty cool. Awesome. So that's all set up. Now this sliding door, I want it to the frame of it, which is called PVC. I want to make it dark. Let's give it a black look like that, and a little bit of glossiness to it. Oh, come on now. And yeah, okay, so that's the frame. Awesome. Okay, so now thinking in order of biggest, working from biggest to smallest. The next thing that we should be adding to our scene now is the curtain. Now curtains terrify a lot of people, and it terrified me the first time I did it, but it's actually really easy to make. Okay, this is how we do it. We just add in a plane, which you probably could have guessed. That's your first step, right? And then we just shape this plane to whatever size you want your curtain, all right? So far, so good. Okay, so this is our plane right here. Now we are going to be using, and also move it to its own separate layer, layer 3. We also are going to be using the cloth simulator. So with any simulation, as I've said in the past, you want to make sure that you have square faces. And this is a big rectangle at the moment. So if, we were to subdivide it, we get rectangles. That's not good for cloth simulations or any simulation. So we want square. So we've got to do some loop cuts. Loop cuts until it looks square. That looks pretty square to me. Yeah, those look like square faces. Good. So now I can subdivide it a few times, that many times. Awesome. Now I'm going to take each second row like this, holding down Shift and Alt as I click on those edges there. And then I'm just going to drag this out. And what this is doing, or actually, make it even more realistic. Let's do it properly. Let's move that to move the 3D cursor just to the top of that point right there. Just get it right, about there. And then set the pivot point for the 3D cursor. And then let's just rotate that out a little bit to make it look like a real curtain, where it sort of tapers off towards the top, where it's sort of pinned together. And then you can just pull it out a little bit towards there. And maybe that's a little bit too much. Let's just pull it back a little bit. But there you go. You want to get that look, basically. Okay, now before you continue on, you need to UV unwrap your mesh, because we're going to be applying a texture to this, and if you try to do UV unwrapping later on, you'd be shocked to find that it doesn't work. In fact, look at that. It already doesn't work at all. It's okay. We should have done that before we did this, these creases, all right? Look, let's just... I apologize. Unwrap. Now we've got it correct. Now I'll pause it. Selected all the rows. Rotate it out a little bit. Pull it out to there. Okay. Cool. Cool beans, man. All right. Cool. That's pretty good, I would say. All right, so now we can do the cloth simulation. Sorry, I'm sort of off in my own world here. I'm sort of trying to think how to get this all right. Okay, cloth simulator. Da-da, da-da, dun, 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 dun. Simulation work for tutorials is never advised because it always goes wrong. So I'm trying to get this right. So first thing we want is we want to pin the top of our curtain here so it doesn't move. So this is pretty easy to do. Vertex groups, assign. And now we've got a little red line there. That means it's working. Now in our cloth, click on pinning and then select the group, which means now if we were to run this, run it from frame 1, see the cloth simulation is working fine and dandy, but it's staying where it is. That top part isn't moving, which is good. Now we want to add in some subsurface stuff, right? Subsurface modifier, okay? So now it's got some detail to it, which is good. Now you'll notice the bottom is sort of like unfolding, which is good. But it's still mostly keeping its crease, which is really what we want. Also, by the way, we should take these edges here and apply a crease to them so that we still get sharp edges where there should be, because it is fabric that's been cut, right? Okay, so that's all fine and dandy. Now we want to create the look, because from our view of the camera, let's go into camera view, we got the curtain here and we want it to sort of be blowing outwards and actually hitting this couch here. So I'm going to move the couch to the layer of the curtain as well. And I want it to look like that's an open door there, so the wind is blowing just that edge out, but this edge here is mostly sort of staying where it is. Okay, so we're trying to get like a sort of a breeze sort of look. Now this is easier said than done because yeah, it's a simulation, and one false move and you're wrong. It's like trying to defuse a bomb. You got to do everything right. Okay, so everything's there. All right, now we want to add in a force field, which is going to blow our curtain to the couch. Now, normally I would say wind, but I've done some experimentation. I found that force actually works far better in this situation. If we wanted to just make it blow the entire curtain, then we would just use, wind. But in this case, we want just one end. So this force here, if I put it right in the middle there, yeah, about there, and then give it a strength of something crazy. Let's go like 1,000, right? And also for your couch, make sure that you've got collision turned on so that your curtain here interacts with it. Now, if we just run that, we should see that effect right there. And that's actually pretty good. Now that, yeah, I'm actually going to pretty much keep that because it's pretty much the exact sort of effect that we want. You wouldn't believe it. This is I think the third time I've recorded this tutorial, and before I was using the wind force, and I could not get this effect to actually work. I was doing all sorts of tests and whatever, and in the end I was just like, forget it, I'm going to use a force instead of the actual wind thing, and it worked straight away. So yeah, we're just going to use this, all right? Now the trick here is to make it so that this curtain is actually blocking the window. Now, why would we want to do that? The reason for that is that outside the door, we've got a big HDR, which has got a little bit of environment, but we don't want to have to model trees and all sorts of other stuff behind it. So we just want to keep the curtain sort of blocking it, right? So you want to get it just right, about there, basically. So if you're confident that you've got it in the right place, hit Shift D, which is what I always advise to do. Move that to its own layer, just in case you wanted to keep the cloth settings as they are and do something else later on. Then apply the subsurf and the cloth simulator. So that is now frozen in place. And move that now to its own layer, and the couch back to its couch layer. Cool beans. I feel like one of those guys that come to school. Like when you say cool beans, it's like one of those motivational speakers that's trying to immediately get on the like appear cool to all the students. He says weird stuff that's really outdated. Cool bananas, man. Cool beans. All right, whatever. We got a curtain, which is good. So we gotta give it a material now. And this material of this curtain is it involves 3 different shaders. Now, what do we want for this curtain? Like, what properties does an actual curtain have? Well, it's got light that will be able to hit it from the front, so that's the diffuse. It should also have light that should be able to pass through the curtain because it's quite thin. So we also need a translucent shader. And also, this type of curtain is one of that sort of like flimsy little fabric silk type ones. So it's going to have some transparency as well. So 3 different shaders. First, we're going to combine the diffuse and the translucent with an add shader. Make sure it's add. And then the transparent one, we're going to use a mix shader. And then this value here will control how much transparency. Full transparency, so it's invisible. And then just a little bit. Okay, so something like that. Now, we want to give it a texture. Okay, a pattern. All right, so I've included in the starter pack a whole bunch of textures here. Well, sorry. I got some textures here as well, but I mean, I got 3 patterns, okay? Just for this scene, okay? Now, we've got the edgy triangle. That's one that we're going to use. Now, these patterns are seamless, which is, they're hard to find online, or at least ones that you can use like royalty-free, but I made these ones, okay? So this is called edgy triangle, and what we want to do is let's just start by just putting that in the diffuse and translucency part of our curtain. All right, let's just see how that looks. Now, because we've done UV unwrapping, it should already appear on it. Ta-da! It works. Awesome. It's sort of appearing a little bit invisible because of the translucency, but anyways, Okay, so what we want to do is we want to, first of all, increase the scale of it. So texture coordinate node, and then a mapping node. And it's square, so we can just use scaling of, let's try 8. All right, that's going to work. Oh, hang on, it's not square, it's rectangular. Sorry, that's what I was supposed to say. This is 2 by 1, basically, which means your y should be double whatever your x is. So in this case, the y should be 16. So that works out pretty well. That's good. Now for the colors. To color it, this is really easy. Because it's black and white, that's deliberately black and white, because it gives you full control over the colors in Blender. So what we can do is we just say, what do we want the black to be? Well, I want the black to be I want to make it look like aqua. Okay, like a nice aqua color. All right. Plug this into the translucency one as well. And also for the translucency, it should always be darker than the diffuse, because basically however bright this thing, whatever's going into translucency is, that's controlling how much translucency the material actually has. So you want to darken it. So just mix it with a darkened shader like that, okay? And that's going to help you out. Now for this white area here, I'm going to make it blue. And I'll turn it down a bit. That's pretty good, actually, just like that. That's pretty much spot on to what I want. That's great. Fantastic. And the transparency, that's all good. Great. Awesome. That actually worked out really well. Now, if you want, you can add in like a fabric texture for this transparency, which I did for my final scene to give it like a little bit of a fabric look. You can download the finished .blend if you want to see how that was done. It's a minimal effect, so I haven't included it here, but you're welcome to try it yourself. One thing we need to add for our curtain is down here at the base of it, you want to give it a seam, like a thickness to it, because curtains never look like, because like currently just the way this looks, it looks like just a sheet that was cut off straight from a printer or something and just flimsily chucked in a house, okay? It's got to have a tapered off edge there, which means an edge that's folded in on itself. So an easy way to do that, let's just rename our material here, curtain. And then I'll call this one curtain. Actually, let's just select curtain and then hit 2 to make it its own separate thing. And then I'll call it curtain thick. Okay, so I wanted to remove that transparency there. And this color is really, it's just that. Okay, so we can sort of keep this connected. It's sort of a botched way of doing it, but it's going to work, all right? So that'll just be blue at that base there. So let's hit a sign on that. And for the viewport color, let's just make that something else so we can see that it's working. So that should now be thick. Okay, that's good. So let's turn up that mix value there. There we go. So now it's nice and thick. So you can control how sort of thick that seam actually looks. So we also want to give a seam just along these edges here as well. So one right there. And even though you can't really see it because it's behind a post. And then one right there as well. Excellent. Awesome. Curtain is done. Great. Now that curtain is going to light our scene, give it some color, and it should look cool. So let's give it a render. And we'll see how it looks so far. And then we can get into the cool stuff, adding in some furniture. All right, cool. So this is how it's looking so far. The curtain's in place. And now we can really start to get into, as I said, adding in the furniture and stuff. So first things first, let's add in a table, because a couch is really annoying if there's no coffee table or anything and there's nowhere to put a TV remote. So you want to make it look lived in, don't you? So hit Shift F1 and we're going to be using the side table. Where is that? Side table. There we go. Tables. Side table. Click on Group and go ahead and append that in. If you're ever wondering, like, should I link or append? Linking, unless you're an advanced user, don't worry about it. But linking sort of allows you to like make an adjustment to one file and have it affect all the others. So it's really good for production teams and stuff. But it means that if you were to link it into this scene, then you couldn't say click on any of this stuff and then change the materials. So it's restricting, but it's good for teamwork and, you know, if you're working on a big project. Anyways, so I got the side tables. Now I want to add in a lamp. Okay, now I've got a particular lamp, which is move this to layer 2. Okay, I got a particular lamp which I specifically picked because it's got a really nice design to it. It's this one right here. Click that, group. It's called the Arco floor lamp. I don't know who designed it, but if I had to put money on it, I'd say he was German, because they know how to design furniture. Those guys, I don't know why, but their furniture always looks the best. Yeah, you guys do a great job. I don't know if it is or not, but the thing about this, the reason this is a really popular lamp, by the way. I was watching Modern Family the other day, and I saw it in the background in Jay's house. And I was like, hey, I modeled that lamp. Oh, it's a popular lamp. The reason this is popular, I think, because it actually directs your attention to the couch. So very subtly, what we're trying to keep a focal point on this couch here. Without a focal point, your scene will fail. It's really, really important. So you add in subtle things like this swirl here, which is guiding your attention to the couch. And what I'm going to put right here, right where this lamp leads down to, is a cushion. And this is not accidental. This is guiding our attention right to where I want it. So this cushion, this is the cushion modern. Sorry, I'm clicking too fast. Cushion modern group, add that in, pull that all the way back. This is one that was modeled off a really cool couch I saw online. And it's got a nice, unique, bright neon pattern. Looks really awesome. Really attention demanding, you know, which is what you want for a focal point. Okay. Now check this out. If we've done it right, with our camera selected, if we turn on rule of thirds, that couch should pretty much be right on that rule of thirds spot. We can maybe, yeah, raise that up a little bit. But yeah, that's not accidental. We want to guide our attention somewhere, and in this case, we want to guide it like right there. Okay, so cool. So we've got that in. Now let's go ahead. Let's add in a floor rug. We'll just do some basic stuff here. The cowhide rug, which is how did that become popular? You know, like who would have thought like the skin of an animal placed on the floor, like people would want that in their homes. I guess it's probably like a throwback to the olden days of hunting or whatever. You want to show off to people. I killed this beast. Now step on it. Because killing it wasn't enough for that poor animal. Now it has to be a rug for the rest of its life. Alright, now what else are we going to add to it? We got a few other things. We got some artwork. So looking at this wall here, there's a very bare patch of wall, so we can add in a piece of artwork which will suit this scene. So in this case it's called Abstract Aqua Blur, which is a piece of artwork that I made myself really in Photoshop. It sort of looks a bit like this. It's oh, come on now. But the idea of this artwork is to complement the colors of the rest of the scene. So it's got this nice blue aqua sort of look to it. And also sort of grab your attention a little bit as well. So we're putting that flat against the wall, wherever it is, right there. But yeah, it was created from a free image which I got off Pixabay, which is a great site, by the way, if you want free images that you can do whatever you want to, because it's like, it's beyond Creative Commons. It's like you can do it, yeah, whatever you want with it, and you don't have to credit anyone for it. But I took an image of some grass, and then I just took it into Photoshop, blurred it, and add some colors, and came out like a nice little piece of abstract artwork, which I thought really looked really nice. Okay, so now let's add in some more fiddly stuff. Let's add in some books, okay, right on this side table here. So I included in the starter pack a whole bunch of different books. So we've got books. Where are the books? Hey, where are the books? Oh, there they are. Okay. Group all. Let's just select all of them. All those books. All right. So here they are in a big pile on the floor. Okay. And we're going to use them in two places. All right. One of them is on the side table over here. How can I do this? There's too much stuff going on. Oh, okay. There we go. That would make sense. Okay. All right. Now these books have been carefully chosen as well. You'll notice the colors. They're keeping with the color scheme of this room,
which is an analogous color scheme. If you followed my color theory video, which you should be doing, no, it's colors next to each other on the color wheel, basically. So they are very pleasing to the eye. And then on top of it, I'm going to put an open book. So yeah, basically everything in this scene has either purple, green, or blue, basically. Cool. They say for photography that you should never ever have more than 3 colors in a photograph, which I don't know if any of you guys are photographers out there. Oops, I needed to hit Alt D on those. But that's really hard to do. But more than 3 colors in a photograph is said to be very, very distracting. So yeah, 3 colors like max. And yeah, that's why black and white photographs are rampant. They're like all over the internet. There's like black and white Flickr groups on on Flickr, like photo clubs and stuff, people that only photograph in black and white. It's like a thing, that people do and get really into. It just looks so much better black and white because the colors aren't distracting you. It's also why desaturated things generally look pleasing to the eye, and it also allows you to be more slack with your color work, which is why a lot of video games like Gears of War and stuff like that, they desaturate everything. They like put it through a bleach bypass, and that's because well, it also creates a very atmospheric look, but it saves them some time as well. Look at that, I just fill in a bit of rambling. That looks a bit repetitive there, like these books. Like I would probably, go to a little bit more trouble of making these look more random. The idea is to make it look like it's just a pile of books that's stacked there next to the couch, I would go to a bit more trouble to make it look less uniform, because that's a telltale sign that something's fake. But in this case, we're just going to keep it as it is right now. That's fine. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of new stuff added to the scene. Let's go ahead, give it another render, and we'll see how that looks.
Alright, so this is the result that we've got so far. So, having a look around, it's very noisy. We've got some speckly fireflies, of course, coming through. And that's for 2 reasons. One, we've got a lot of sort of indirect light. It's casting some caustics, so underneath your light paths, make sure you check no caustics. The other reason is that this floor lamp here is actually turned on. So it's got a bulb inside it. Like if you actually get in close to it, it's got a little bulb in there, which has got an emission shader on it, which is no good for us. Because, and this is like a rule of like architecture photography, you should never have a light source, an artificial light source turned on if it is daytime. So I'm just going to make that shader transparent, which will basically make the bulb disappear, which is good. So that should get rid of some of it. Hey, look, there's a book coming out of that thing. That was weird. All right, let's try putting that on top. Okay, nice. What other problems have we got? Okay, yes. Another problem, another reason that we've got a lot of noise is that, we've got a lot of indirect sort of bounce light and all that sort of stuff. So one thing you can do is use the clamp value. So this is something roughly a lot of people know about, but a lot of people don't as well. This will allow you to clamp down on values which are basically fireflies. Like you can, it'll find them and sort of kill them. Like it'll set the maximum value for a light, like contrast difference. That's sort of how I understand it from pixel to pixel. So don't set this too low, because what it will actually do is also turn down the maximum. Like if you have like a bright wall, it'll turn down the brightness on that wall. So I generally start really high, and then I work my way down until the fireflies are done. In this case, setting it to 5 works fine. It used to be just a clamp value. Now there's clamp direct and indirect. So indirect is generally where all the fireflies come from. So that's good that you can separate them. So yeah, 5 there. Good, great, awesome. What else are we going to add? The hallway, we want to add some light down our hallway there. So that's very easy to do.
we're just going to add in some fake doors here. So there's a door. Here's another door, I guess, right? And then as well as that, just to make it look like, you know, there's an actual rest of the house there, what I'll do is I will pull out, let's just grab that, pull that out a little bit so we can see down the hallway a little bit. That's good. I'm going to put a mirror on this wall here, okay? And I'll show you what I'm going to do. Take that plane there, let's make it its own separate object. Scale it down. So this is going to be sort of like a length mirror, something like that. But it's going to have a bezeled edge. So let's just inset that. Cool. Pull that out. So if we were to look at that, it just looks like that now. And then let's just give it a shader, which is glossy. Okay. Now on this wall right here, the wall that we can't actually see, if we put something here, it will actually reflect into the mirror, which will give us a cool sort of look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another artwork to our scene here. Artwork grass, very descriptive. Grab that, place it at the far end of the scene, right about there. Nice, sort of up about there. That's good. Make sure that your mirror is actually visible as well. Okay, and now let me just see if we can actually see that in the mirror there. So the idea is to give the render some depth. Make it look like it's not just an empty, you know, normal looking architectural render. Like there's some stuff there, you know, there's an actual house in the background there. So this is a very simple way, a little illusion, just add a quick hallway down the back there, and it just gives the illusion that there's something else out there. So that's cool. Got a little bit of artwork there, and yeah, it looks pretty good. Not bad. All right, now all the objects, I'm going to move them to its own separate layer, and we're going to do a little bit of texturing on our floor. Cool. Yep. Okay, so the floor, we want to give it a nice tiled sort of looking texture. A marble tiled texture, I should say. So the first thing we need to do is we need to UV unwrap it before we do anything else. So UV unwrap. Oh, make sure you apply the scale first. Unwrap it, that's good. Now into the node editor, Shift F3 for that shortcut there. And I've given you a marble tiled texture in your texture folder in the starter pack there. So interior tiles light, that's the one that we're going to use. So go ahead and open that. And let's plug this into a texture coordinate mapping node using UV. And then let's set this scale to 5 for both of those. And then let's plug that into the diffuse. Now let's just see how this looks. Now we should be able to see it on our floor here already, if it is appearing, and we can. Good. So you can change the scale if you want bigger or smaller tiles, but that's generally about the right size we want. Now tiles are obviously shiny, so next thing we would add is a glossy shader and mix it together with a mix shader, of course. Now these tiles, something I would almost rarely ever do, just going to give it a really low roughness value, like something like that, because tiles, this type of tile is very, very shiny, okay? The other thing we wanted to do is to give it some bump, because you've got some cracks in the tiles, and also it's a marble tile, so it's got a little bit of texture along the top there. So one thing that's included in the starter pack is with each texture, I mean there's only 2 textures, it's that one and then this wood texture, but you've got these 3 variations. So that's for specularity, that's for bump mapping, normal map, and then this is for displacement, which you would rarely ever use for tiles, but anyway, it's there if you need it. So normal mapping, so click on that, click on open, make sure this is set to non-color data, very important, and then underneath vector, add a normal map node, and then just connect this up to your 2 shaders that you've got here. And this will now look bumpy. Oh, and also make sure that you connect it to the mapping so it's got the correct scaling as well. And there we go. Now we got some bump mapping. So let's turn that down because it seems to like almost look inverted. Okay, so something around about that. Yeah, pretty subtle. That's good. The other thing it's got is, where are those textures? Textures. It's got a specularity map, as I said before, so we can use that in our mix shader. If we just drag that across there, and then if you want to control what is also connect it to the mapping input as well, so that it's got the right texture as well. I mean, right scaling, and you can see that effect what that's done is now it looks like there's some areas that are shiny and others that aren't. It looks almost a little bit dirty, which is cool. So what you can do is you can add in a color ramp node, and if the brightness is too much, the reflection's too much, you can just turn down the maximum amount of brightness just by selecting the white value and then just turning that down. But it's actually almost pretty good where it is. So that's fine and dandy. Good. Cool. So the tiles are now done. The other thing we'll do is we'll give this wall here a nice wallpaper. So let's just call this white walls for the normal ones, and then I'll add another material and I'll call this wallpaper. So this one's fairly easy to do. Hit assign on that wall there. We need to UV unwrap this entire object here, which is pretty easy to do. Apply the scale first, unwrap it. Okay, there's a cut there somewhere. Oh yeah, that's why. And then just scale this up till it roughly fits, about the size of that grid floor. I like to keep things, to the size of a grid floor. Okay, now for our wallpaper, go to the node editor, Shift F3. We're going to use the diffuse shader, just the diffuse shader for the first time in a long time. We're going to connect an image texture to it, and this texture that we're going to use is from the starter pack in the textures folder. It should be called patterns, actually. I should have called that patterns. Anyways, we're going to use this one called Union Jack. So go ahead and click open on that. And what this will allow us to do, because it's black and white as well, is we can change how the colors of that. So let's just go have a look at just the wall on its own. Let's see how this looks. We should see a massive Union Jack. There you go. Well, it sort of looks like a Union Jack. I don't know if Brits would be proud of that or whatever. Anyways, so add a UV unwrapping, texture coordinate node with a mapping node. And then for the scale, I'm going to go, let's try 8. See if that's enough. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then we can change these colors to be whatever we want. First of all, you should never have pure white, like a value of 1. So set that to that. And then this black, we can make it to whatever color we want. We actually want it to be really subtle. I don't want it to be shining through like crazy. So 0.6 is fine. And then I'm also going to give it a little bit of a blue color as well. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit too much. A little bit too much saturation. But yeah, keeping with the color scheme, of course, giving a little bit of an interest to the wall. So little things like this will help your scene. It'll just raise it, adds a bit of interest to the bland areas without being too noisy and too demanding. This column here as well, this was accidental when I was making this scene, but I found it looked pretty cool. I'm going to paint it blue, like a nice thick blue color like that, nice and dark. And that actually turns out to be nice looking. So let's just do that. Oops. And the other thing for all these columns, we don't want them to be sharp because in the real world, there is no such thing as a 90-degree angle on anything. So we always add a bevel. So now we've got, I'm going to give it a bevel of 1 centimeter, which is really, really thick. Normally, you would never use something like that. But this is a rounded column. So I'm going to use a lot of smoothed off segments there, make it nice and round. And then I'll just do the exact same thing for that very easily just by copying that modifier. Awesome. Okay, so we've got the hallway, we've got everything else. Yes, there is another thing to add. We need to add in a blanket on this part of the couch because in our render, you'll notice on the right-hand side here, something missing, like the couch is a little bit bare on the right-hand side there. So we're going to add in a blanket and we're just going to make it fall right there. And we can do this really easily, all right? So trust me, this part is easy. So all you need to do is just take it, scale it down along one axis so it's like rectangular like that. Then make it a square face, subdivide it a few times. How many times is that? Maybe that's too many. Yeah, okay, that's good. Then, as we did with the curtain, make those edges sharp And then I'm going to scale it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab almost half of it. And this is just a really quick way of getting some interest in our cloth simulation or whatever. Is if we just, you want to try and keep, oh yes, before we do this, what have I forgotten to do? I forgot to do the UV unwrapping, of course. So, because we're adding a texture to it, that's why we need to do the UV unwrapping. So, yeah, okay. So now that I've done that, we want to make it look like the blanket sort of folded in on itself. So that's why I'm doing this. So you could try to sort of rely on the cloth simulator to do that for you, but this is a way of sort of cheating it and saving yourself some time. Cool, so that doesn't look like much yet, but check this out. Turn on cloth. Also make sure that for your couch, every object here has collision turned on. So every cushion, everything else has collision turned on so that when this hits it, it actually interacts with it, okay? So we're gonna use cotton, everything else is fine. Cloth collision, turn on self collision, and then set the distance to maximum, okay? Oh, and also friction, turn that way up, otherwise it will slide off the couch, which is really annoying. Okay, cool. Now let's give this a quick bake and let's see how this turns out. Awesome, so that's not too bad. We got it sort of folding in and it looks like a nice sort of blanket. Okay, but I want to give it a little bit more detail than that. So I'm going to give it a subsurf. Make sure you hit it above that other cloths in there. And I might just rotate it that way a little bit as well. Okay, and sorry, this is the you can tell when it's ever coming to the end of one of my tutorials. I just start to and ah and stutter my way through the rest of it. We're almost there. All right, so this looks really cool. Check this out. Plump, and then it sort of folds in on itself and it looks really cool. Awesome. So now we can freeze it at that point. You can Shift D or whatever if you want to save that position, maybe use it for later. But that looks pretty cool. It looks like a relaxed blanket that's sort of been folded on the edge there. As long as it looks natural, it's done. Cool. Now we can apply a subsurf to that to make it look a little bit crisper. Turn on smooth shading and recalculate those normals. The other thing we need to do is add a solidify modifier because it's got double-sided basically. So let's go 1 millimeter like that and apply the scale. Now you can see there's a huge gap between where it's touching, between where it thinks it's touching the couch and where it actually is. And that's because of the that huge value that we gave the self collision. But if you don't do that, then you get sort of like intersecting parts. It's sort of a downside of the cloth simulator. It's not so good at the collision side of things. Yeah. Anyways, that looks cool. So let's give it a material. So I'm going to show you how to give a very quick fabric sort of looking material. All right. So this is how you do it. You add in, let's say you want to go, okay. All right. I'm trying to think. Okay. Let's imagine you got one color right here. You want to give this a red sort of look. What you do to make it look like it's got a bit of a fabric look to it is you add in a mix RGB node, drag that across there, and then a Fresnel node. And then with this Fresnel node, connect that to the factor input. Now what this will do is let's just move this to layer 1 just so that we can focus on it with the sunlight. What this will do is that Fresnel will treat it like a reflection on a car basically. So you can see that look. So see how the outer edge has got this sort of like fine white look to it, almost like it's made of velvet. That's that color right there. So you can change that color to be blue or whatever you want really, but giving it a sort of a whitish look. Generally I go for the same sort of color that is, but just a little bit, less, a little bit brighter, and it makes it look like, it's got a little bit of fabric to it, right? So it's really cool, easy way of making fabric. In this case, we're going to use an image texture. I just showed you that little example just in case somebody wanted a quick tip. So we're going to use this one, which has got 101. It's a seamless pattern. We're going to imagine this guy is a nerd, so he likes computers or whatever. So it's a seamless pattern of 101, all right? So before we connect it to the mix node, let's just drag it through a color ramp node, which is of course going to let us change the color. Okay, well that's far too big. So of course we need to change the scaling of that, which is easy to do with a mapping node. And then let's go 10. Okay, now in this case, I think, yes, that's right. It's in the other direction, so the X needs to be double whatever the Y is, because it's not 1-to-1 scale, so you need to make sure that you get it right. I'm gonna go 25 by 15, maybe 30, something like that. Maybe 35. Hang on, doesn't look quite right. Yeah, there we go, something like that. That's good. Now for the colors, what colors do we want to give it? The black, I'm gonna make it a, oh, pull out there. Give it a sort of a murkish, sort of darkish blue color like that. And then this white for these 1s and 0s, I'm going to give that a very nerdy aqua color like that. A little bit greenish. Well, there we go. You know, because he's into the Matrix or whatever. This guy doesn't have friends around that often, so, you know. And when he does, they just play Super Smash Brothers, you know. But, you know, he lives a happy life, I guess. Oh, you could set this to screen as well. That's probably helpful. There we go. I'll turn that down a little bit in case it's too much. But there we go. And there you have a blanket over a couch. Excellent. So we're just about done. One thing we're going to do, I think, before we do another render, is we want to add something to the foreground. And the reason that we do this is for depth. Because if you've just got, I mean, we've got a midground, okay? This whole center part here, we've got a background, got something going on in the background, and we need something in the foreground to add some depth to it. It just helps with composition and makes the whole image look more interesting. So what I like to do is just grab something like a plant, okay? So I've got two plants here. I've got a decoration twig. So go ahead and add that in. So that's this weird looking thing. Let's move this up, drag that over to that, pull that down. Okay. Now you might think this is like really weird putting that in the way, but we're going to use depth of field to blur that out, okay? So this is where it starts to look cool. And then the other one is a potted grass thing in a vase, okay? So where is it? Where is it? Group. There we go. Awesome. Almost in the exact place I wanted to put it anyway. About there. Okay, so that's just going to give it, make it look like there's something in the foreground. A little bit of plants. Maybe there's a desk right here or something like that. Okay, now you need to give it some depth of field. So select your camera. And then you want to focus it on the couch frame, which is this thing right here, right in the middle there. So right there. And then for the aperture, I like to use f-stops. And I'm going to set it to 5.6, which is good. That's going to give us a nice range. So let's give it another render now. I'm going to go up a sample amount to 150. No, whoa, let's go 200. I know, a little bit crazy. But hopefully this will be the final one. Let's see how it turns out. All right, so this is the render that we got. It's never finished, is it? There's always something else to fix. So these twigs are a little bit, they're interrupting, so they should be a little bit smaller, so we'll fix that. And the wallpaper in the background there's a little bit too big, so I'll scale that down. And the transparency of this and the color of that blanket. So let's see if I can remember all of those things. So the wallpaper here. So we're going to increase the brightness of that so it's not as demanding, and increase the scaling of it. So let's go 13. Okay. 13 for those. Good. Awesome. Okay, now for this blanket here, I think the ones, those little digits there, are a little bit too bright. So I'm just going to turn them down a little bit so they're less in your face. That's good. Now these twigs here, let's turn those, make them a little bit smaller. Bring them in a little bit closer to the camera. Yeah, something like that, I think. Okay, and of course the curtain as well, which is a little bit too bright and demanding. So I'm just going to increase the transparency of that. Just a little bit like that. And I'm also going to turn down the translucency by increasing that mix shader there. So that'll allow less light to sort of pass through. But everything else is pretty much good to go. So we'll do one final render, and then I think that should be it. So let's give it a go. Excellent. Everything is finished, except for compositing, of course. It wouldn't be a tutorial without compositing. We need to do compositing. So what we want to do with this is basically, we want to add a little bit of glare, a little bit of sun glare. So let's add that right now. Some really simple stuff. Glare node, like this, yeah. Add that, right? Okay, look at that. Got some sun glare coming off that thing there. So this works because of this this threshold here. Basically, we can turn that threshold up, so it's just that light, and the streaks as well. So something like that. Cool. And then if I turn this down here, what we can do is, if you want to turn down the amount of that, you just set the mix value to anything negative, basically. So that's good. And then we want to add a little bit of diffuse glow to some of the other areas. Now, this is a method that I just figured out actually today. It's a really cool way to add glow to something. Bummer. I just closed the thing and I need that open, otherwise it doesn't apply to the finished render. Sorry about this. Let's hit F11. It's a new thing that they added. You have to have render result open, otherwise it doesn't save it to the image. Anyways, we want to add diffuse glow to some of these areas here, right? Now, normally you'd add like a blur Gaussian, fast Gaussian like this, right? And then you want to isolate some of those areas, right? So what you would do is you would use a RGB curves. Mixing up all the words. And you go something like this because you want to get just the dark areas. But look at that. You get like negative weird results because these parts are crossing, but then there's too much available. And then this part here, this will come out really weird. So it doesn't work. But check this out. I found out this cool method. I'm so happy that I invented something, right? So you take the output of the render layer, and then you put this into greater than. And look at this. Now we can isolate which parts of it are going to be receiving the glow, which is pretty cool. So those are all white, so we need to combine it with a mix node. Put this into the factor input, drop that into the bottom input, make this solid black, and now everything is colored. And then when we put that through here, we have a proper blur as it should be. So now we can just add a mix node like that, set this to screen, and what do you know? We have some nice glow coming through. So we can turn that down to something less crazy. Oh yeah, that should be set to add, not screen. Yeah, look at that. So we got a little bit of glow coming off that cushion there, which I really like. That looks pretty nice. The other thing we want to do, what else do we want to do? Oh, we want to add a vignette, of course. Come on. We got to add a vignette, always. Distort, lens distortion, set that to 1. And then this, we add in a blur node. So let's just Shift-D that blur node. And then let's add in a mix node right here. And then set this to multiply. Okay, so this is just, you don't want it to be too much, but you want to sort of keep the focus on the middle part of the scene. There's a really bright light coming on that wall over there, which is taking some of the attention away. So I'd probably fix that if I was doing a final render or whatever. But anyways, so I mean, it's pretty good. Oh, we want to have that glare in there. Okay, that's good. The other thing you might want to do is you'll see that there's some areas that are like really super dark, especially like on the couch. So what you can do, and this is something I've started doing, is using the tone map node. So this is sort of getting into advanced stuff, but this like gives you a really like brightened, sort of like really washed out version of your render. But what it will allow you to do is if you mix it with, say something like this, and then let's go overlay, swap those around. then what we can do is just control how much of, because you don't want to make something like solid black, you know what I mean? So this is what the current one looks like, and see that couch looks really dark, but with this we can control sort of how dark things become. So it sort of just gives you a little bit more control over it. And then one final thing that we should do is some color grading. So we'll do a color balance, add this in. This one's always fun to use. I want to give the mid-tones a bit of a purpley bluish look. Nice. And let's make those highlights a little bit yellow, just slightly. That's good. And then let's make these shadow tones a little bit purplish. That's too purple. You're crazy. There we go. And that's it. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys create. Now this is, I mean, it is a tutorial, and you know, you can follow it and everything, but I'm hoping you guys can go out there and create your own unique stuff. If you do, I'm really keen to see it. If you are really keen about architecture, the Architecture Academy has 10 full modules on a variety of different scenes, including a more elaborate lounge room, skyscrapers, a bathroom, museums, all sorts of different stuff in it. So the full course has full length, really in-depth tutorials if you're interested in it. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this little freebie. Go out there, make something cool, and if you do, share it with me. Thanks for watching. Bye.